The sounds of dawn at Mono Lake. We try to find the words to describe this place. Pictures have come close, revealing a single moment of beauty and mystery. Here, water, earth, and sky present an unfamiliar landscape, challenging our perception of what a lake should look like. Mono Lake is not like other lakes. For some, this lake is a harsh and uninviting place of desert, volcanic ash, and saltwater, nothing more than a casual stop along the highway. To others, it is a place of wonder and self-discovery, a world of solitude off the beaten path. This lake is well known for its strange Tufa towers, but less obvious is its rich natural history and its place among a people deciding the fate of their water. The story of Mono spans geologic time and human generations. We find ourselves newcomers here, searching for our place in a world with limited water and fragile environments. Mono Lake sits within a high desert basin surrounded by mountains and volcanic hills. To the west, the Sierra Nevada abruptly rises 6,000 feet above the lake's surface. No water flows out of the lake. Thousands of years of evaporation have concentrated salts and other minerals within the lake, making it 2 to 3 times as salty as the Pacific Ocean. The lake sits at the western edge of the Great Basin, a large geographical area defined by mountains and valleys that receive relatively little precipitation and have no outlets to the ocean. Mono is but one of several perennial lakes remaining in the Great Basin that, along with Great Salt Lake and others, provide critical migratory bird habitat. Strange mineral towers stand in isolated groves at the lake's edge. Known as Tufa, these unusual limestone deposits form only underwater, where calcium-bearing springs mix with carbonates in the lake. These towers have always been visible around the shores of Mono Lake, but when tributary streams were suddenly diverted 300 miles south, the retreating lake revealed entire forests of tufa. Besides tufa, Mono is known for its volcanoes. To the south lie the Mono craters, a series of plugged domes spanning 11 miles, the youngest mountain range in North America. Near Mono's shores, isolated hot springs remind us that the volcanic activity of the past is a possibility in the future. The most recent volcanic event at Mono Lake occurred within the lake itself. Paoha, the large gray island, emerged from beneath the lake just 3 centuries ago when magma pushed lake bottom sediments above the water's surface. Though it sounds Hawaiian, Paoha is the native Paiute word meaning water babies and refers to the wavy-haired spirits said to inhabit the island's hot springs. Paoha's smaller companion, Nejet Island, looks more like a volcano. This black cinder cone and its nearby islets erupted repeatedly over the last 2,000 years, occasionally spewing huge blocks of pumice that floated on the lake's surface. Evidence from ancient volcanic eruptions show that Mono Lake has existed for at least 760,000 years, and it is perhaps much older. Along the lake's northwest shore lies Black Point. Looking more like a broad hill, this volcano erupted entirely underwater when Ice Age Mono Lake nearly filled the Mono Basin. The setting sun highlights shorelines of an older, larger lake. Traveling back in time 13,000 years, you might have gazed upon a lake several times larger than the Mono Lake of today. You can see evidence of ancient Mono in the isolated groves of Ice Age tufa stranded hundreds of feet above the surface of the lake. Monuments to a once vast inland sea. Today, mountain streams replace Ice Age glaciers. Mono's two largest tributary streams, Rush and Levining Creeks, begin their journey thousands of feet above the lake in the rock and ice expanse of the High Sierra. Fed by melting snows, they wind their way into this desert basin bearing fresh water and trace minerals, creating a unique habitat in this arid environment. Each year, an average of 3 feet of water evaporates from the surface of the lake. Over thousands of years, minerals have slowly accumulated here, making Mono a saline lake. The lake is also extremely alkaline. With a pH of 10, Mono Lake's waters are as alkaline as the strongest household soaps. There are no fish in Mono, no trees grace the shoreline, and in the middle of a hot summer day, Mono seems like a lifeless salt lake. But Mono Lake is far from dead. Those who take the time to venture down to the lakeshore understand why this lake is among the most productive aquatic ecosystems on the continent. Brine shrimp in the trillions fill the water in what amounts to a summer serving of shrimp soup. About the size of your thumbnail, these tiny shrimp multiply to incredible numbers during the summer months, feeding on abundant microscopic algae. And then there are the flies. In the late summer, a thick black carpet of alkali flies covers much of the lake shore. Harmless to humans, these tiny alkali flies feed exclusively on algae. The flies live most of their lives beneath the water as larvae and pupae. In all their life stages, they are an excellent source of fat and protein for birds. Alkali fly pupae were also an abundant, reliable source of food for the Native American people of the Mono Basin. They call themselves Kusareka'a, meaning fly eater in their own native tongue. If you measure the mass of living organisms in Mono Lake and compare it to other equal volumes of water, Mono Lake stands out as one of the most productive aquatic ecosystems in North America. This simple ecosystem feeds millions of migratory birds. Few inland lakes in the Great Basin provide such an abundant food source. California gulls come to Mono Lake to breed. Over 80% of the state's population is born at the lake. After Great Salt Lake, Mono Lake is the largest California gull rookery in the world. The gulls arrive by early spring to nest on Mono's islands. The chicks fledge in July. The rest of the summer and fall, they casually return to the coast after feeding on brine shrimp, alkali flies, and at the local garbage dumps. Another bird common to Mono's waters in the summer months is the Wilson's phalarope. About the size of a sandpiper, Wilson's phalaropes arrive at Mono Lake in July from their northern breeding ground. Eating mostly alkali flies, these little shorebirds depend on Mono Lake as a critical refueling and staging area before they undertake a 3,000-mile non-stop journey to South America. Arriving in greater numbers than any other bird, eared grebes cover the surface of the lake by October. 1.5 to 2 million of these duck-like diving birds visit Mono Lake in the fall to molt their feathers and fatten themselves on brine shrimp before departing south to the Salton Sea or the Gulf of California. Because it is used by so many shorebirds, Mono Lake was designated as a site of international importance in the Western Hemisphere Shorebird Reserve Network, a collection of critical bird habitats in North and South America. Ducks and geese also come to Mono Lake, but today their numbers are only a small fraction of the million or more waterfowl that once visited the lake. In 1948, 1 million ducks and geese were counted at the lake, but just 40 years later, less than 14,000 could be found. Something happened in 1941 that would drastically alter waterfowl habitat and threaten the lake's entire ecosystem. Mono Lake streams were diverted during a time when water rights were absolute, when free-flowing water was considered wasted water, and when few people understood environmental health. Less than 150 years ago, Los Angeles was a tiny Spanish-American community. William Brewer of the California Geologic Survey remarked of the area in 1861, "Here is a great plain, a most lovely locality. All that is wanted naturally to make it a paradise is water, more water." And more water was found. In 1913, William Mulholland and the young Department of Water and Power finished one of the longest aqueducts in human history, moving an entire river 233 miles south to the growing city of Los Angeles. The consequences exceeded prediction. Owens Lake, the largest lake in California at the time, went dry, deprived of Owens River water that instead went to Los Angeles. 11 years after diversions to Los Angeles began, the entire lake and its ecosystem disappeared. Toxic alkali dust storms took to the sky on windy days, an environmental disaster that continues today. By 1941, the city of Los Angeles had extended the aqueduct to the Mono Basin. 4 streams flowing into Mono Lake became part of a new watershed. Water from these creeks would now flow 338 miles south to a rapidly growing city. After diversions began, Mono Lake streams went dry. Healthy forests of cottonwoods, willows, and pines died along both Rush and Levining creeks. As Rush Creek withered away, so did some of the best trout fishing in California. And during very wet years, the Department of Water and Power released large amounts of water into the dry creeks. The sudden flooding scoured the creek beds, destroying old channels and deeply eroding ancient bottomland habitat. The impacts on the lake itself were more gradual. Without streams to replace evaporated water, the lake slowly receded. Tufa towers were exposed. By 1982, Mono Lake had lost approximately 1/2 its volume of water. Its salinity doubled. The lake had dropped 45 vertical feet, exposing miles of alkali flats and forming a land bridge between Nedget Island and the mainland. When the land bridge emerged, gulls nesting on Nedget Island were no longer isolated from predators like coyotes. The birds were forced to abandon the rookery and move to smaller nearby islands. Wind blowing across alkali flats generated storms of toxic dust that blotted out the eastern horizon and violated federal air quality standards. Studies showed that if the lake continued to fall, the water would become so saline that it would drastically reduce populations of algae, brine shrimp, and alkali flies. If unlimited water diversions continued, what would be the consequences for the gulls, phalaropes, grebes, and other migratory birds that depended on the lake's shrimp and flies? Millions of birds would be faced with a shortage of food. One of the most productive aquatic ecosystems in North America was threatened. People began to question the value of massive water projects that conquered pristine landscapes and their ecosystems. The concept of the greatest good for the greatest number came at a price, and 100 years ago, few considered the environmental cost. Despite these changing attitudes, the environment received little consideration after water rights. The future of Mono Lake looked bleak in 1982, but the lake had already begun to attract some much-needed attention. In 1976, a group of undergraduate students launched an ecological study of the Mono Lake ecosystem. Instrumental in initiating this process was David Gaines, who had just earned his master's degree in ecology from the University of California at Davis. During the summer of 1976, the Mono Basin Research Group made an orderly study of the lake's physical and biological resources. In the process, they became aware that the continued diversion of water from the Mono Basin streams to the city of Los Angeles would severely impact the lake's incredibly productive ecosystem. Appalled by this prospect, David and Sally Gaines and friends formed the Mono Lake Committee in 1978. Immediately, they began spreading the word about the ecological significance and unparalleled beauty of this ancient high desert lake, giving slideshows to clubs, schools, legislators, anyone who would listen. The response was overwhelming. Articles began to appear in magazines like Audubon, Life, and National Geographic. People became intrigued with the lake and began to visit its shores in increasing numbers. Bumper stickers began to appear in Los Angeles and throughout California. The public began to discover Mono Lake and support its protection. With this momentum and increasing awareness, the Mono Lake Committee and the National Audubon Society filed a lawsuit against the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. The lawsuit grew from the concept of the public trust, which states that certain lands and resources belong to the people and that the government has a responsibility to maintain them. The public trust had never been applied in such a way, challenging the water rights of the second largest city in the United States on behalf of the environmental value of a remote saline lake. On February 17, 1983, the California State Supreme Court shook the foundations of water and environmental law. The court ruled that the public trust applied to Mono Lake. Los Angeles's water rights could be changed. Mono Lake made legal history. The public trust had to be considered with all water allocations in California, not just Mono Lake. The public trust ruling alone did not put water back into the lake. A lawsuit initiated by another organization, California Trout, on behalf of the lost stream fisheries, would put the first water down the creeks. By 1988, the tide had clearly turned in favor of Mono Lake, but a severe drought had struck California with no relief on the horizon, and one question had yet to be answered. How much water did the lake need to ensure the health of its vital ecosystem? Meanwhile, the Mono Lake Committee pushed for developing new sources of water to replace Mono Basin diversions. With an additional office and staff in Los Angeles, the committee worked to find solutions at the other end of the aqueduct. The problem was how to replace diverted Mono Basin water without transferring the impacts to another area. Water conservation and water reclamation seemed like simple and obvious solutions. During the 1987 to 1992 drought, the people of Los Angeles cut their water consumption by 30%, demonstrating that water conservation could be a significant new source of replacement water. The drought also prompted the development of water reclamation projects in Southern California. Today, facilities like the West Basin Water Recycling Plant in El Segundo recycle over 50 million gallons per day, providing water for industry, landscape, and groundwater recharge. Conservation programs like the distribution of free ultra-low flush toilets began to make a significant difference, saving over 8 billion gallons of water a year, while also reducing the amount of sewage pumped into Santa Monica Bay. In 1993, the Mono Lake Committee and the City of Los Angeles struck a deal applying for state funds to develop the East Valley Water Reclamation Plant. As part of the deal, the city would give up nearly 40% of its Mono Basin diversions. Back in the Mono Basin, the work to undo the damage of the past was just beginning, while the California State Water Board considered the future of the lake and water diversions to Los Angeles. Restoration of the basin's creeks began in 1990. With the Mono Lake Committee's involvement, old creek channels were cleared of debris and the water was returned for the first time in decades. Within 2 years, habitat began to recover. In 1994, the California State Water Resources Control Board made the final decision on the management of Mono Lake. While the decision is subject to review and reversal, it is still in effect today. The water board shows 6,392 feet above sea level, 20 feet higher than Mono Lake's historic low, and 25 feet lower than the lake's level before water diversions began. Diversions to Los Angeles would continue, but more water would flow into the lake, a compromise that was a victory. Mono Basin streams would have guaranteed minimum flows, and a higher lake level would protect the health of the lake's ecosystem. Dust storms would abate, waterfowl habitat would be restored, and California gulls would have the opportunity to nest again on Nedjed Island. When David Gaines founded the Mono Lake Committee in 1978, no one imagined that the lake would attain such a level of protection. The impossible happened. 16 years of court battles and controversy came to a conclusion. Unfortunately, David would not live to see the lake protected. A decade after founding the Mono Lake Committee, he was killed in an automobile accident during a winter storm. In the story of Mono Lake, the voice of this one individual became the voice of thousands. The days in court ended with the State Water Board decision, but work on behalf of the lake did not. The bulk of restoration work is just beginning, and the process of healing the damage of the past will take decades. The committee's restoration goal is to bring back, to the extent possible, the natural processes and conditions that existed at Mono Lake before diversions. Education on behalf of Mono Lake is also an important part of the committee's work. Canoe tours, South Tufa walks, field seminars, and our informative website allow people to discover more about Mono's unique natural and human history. In Los Angeles, many people have yet to learn of Mono Lake and its connection to their daily lives through hundreds of miles of aqueduct. Each summer, the Mono Lake Committee works with diverse community groups in Los Angeles to bring the city's youth to the source of their water. The Mono Lake Committee continues its work at both ends of the Los Angeles Aqueduct, pursuing solutions to water problems in Southern California while ensuring the future health of Mono Lake. By joining the Mono Lake Committee, you can be a part of a dedicated, successful grassroots organization working to protect California's outstanding water resources while meeting the legitimate water needs of people. We are at a crossroads. More than ever, we have the opportunity to embrace a water ethic, to examine the consequences of our lifestyle, population growth, and water use, and to find ways to reduce the demand on our watersheds. Is Mono Lake saved? As the lake rises and streams recover, we celebrate a rare environmental success. But we must also ask ourselves, are environmental victories forever? Can we walk away from this one? Over the next 20 years, California's population will swell from 33 to nearly 50 million people. Where will the water come from? The Colorado River? The San Francisco Bay Delta? What will happen to Mono Lake? We have found more than one need for this lake: to wander its shores, to explore its depths, to quietly watch the reflection of the seasons, to seek adventure and self-discovery. A million years of mystery whisper from beneath these waters, provoking questions and inspiring wonder among people struggling to determine the fate of their water. The story is not over. Together, we will determine the future of Mono Lake.